let's record this video where you are going to educate me with an ignoramus when it comes to matters of immigration law, and you, the expert. And if you start talking in a sort of complicated way, I'm going to stop you because this will be no use to anybody. So would you explain to anybody watching this video about CSI and naturalisation? The CSI isn't what I thought it was in the first instance, the crime scene investigator. It, of course, is the...
Yes, it's the comprehensive sickness insurance. So yeah, CSI has a secret meaning in the immigration world. So we thought this would be a good idea, as Andrew said, to there's so many changes coming out now in the immigration world. We thought it'd be a great idea to bring some of this to life and to hopefully simplify it. Now, I've been saying to Andrew, you know, you really need to get into immigration more. I started the department about a year ago now. So Andrew's not got direct experience in immigration. So I'm hoping that I can educate Andrew and also help some of our clients and people interested in our website out. So,
agreed. And Louis, I must say, I thought I'd pick it up quickly. So working with you for a year, I thought, oh, well, it can't be that complicated. I'll get the lingo, you know, it'll just be a matter of time. But actually, no, I've really struggled with the lingo, and I can't believe how many barriers are put into place for people who want to use the immigration system here. I mean, I believe in a world without lawyers, actually, and that simply is not my understanding of how immigration here works. You could give it a go, but there are bear traps galore. I'm glad that I'm working with you. So explain to everybody watching these very complicated terms, and if you go off on one, Louis, I'm going to have to rein you in.
Okay, so we're really talking about naturalisation applications here. This is where this issue has come to light. So people who are applying to become British due to having a normally 5 or 6 years residence in the UK.
Okay.
Specifically, we're looking at EU nationals looking to naturalise. So it's actually always been the case that an EU national, in order to be residing here lawfully, they have to be what's called a qualified person. So they have to either be a worker, be self-employed, be self-sufficient, or a student. Now, it's fairly straightforward if you're a worker or self-employed. But if you're what's called self-sufficient or a student, there's actually a requirement that you also hold comprehensive sickness insurance, so private health insurance. Now, the problem is no one knew about this, okay? As there's 3 or 4 million EU nationals have come here, and no one knew about this hidden requirement to hold private health insurance. All EU nationals can use the NHS, have always been able to. So there's simply no practical point in ever having private health insurance. Now, where this is coming to bite people is when they apply for naturalisation, there's 2 issues. One, you have to show there's a very explicit requirement that you've resided here lawfully for 5 years. And so that's the one criteria, with the one issue which can catch people. There's also something called the good character requirement, which actually looks back at someone's history or immigration history over 10 years. And it says, if you didn't, the guidance now states quite clearly, if you didn't hold CSI during that period, that can be a basis to refuse your naturalisation application.
Wow.
And just one more thing this is where it's becoming particularly confusing, is that naturalisation is really the end of the kind of immigration road. That's the final point you get to, and then you can forget about the nightmare journey. Well, nightmare for a lot of people. The step before that is to get settled status under the EU settlement scheme, which means indefinite leave to remain. Now, the requirements for that are completely different. You just have to have lived here. Okay, you don't have to. It doesn't really matter what you've been doing. You could be unemployed for 5 years and still qualify, and then never have CSI and still get settled status. So people get the settled status, think, oh, well, that shows that the Home Office don't have any issue with me. They then apply to naturalise, and then suddenly there's this question of, well, did you have CSI? And so a lot of people commonly will have had a break in between jobs for a year. And that's what the guidance is now. And it's been updated twice in the last year to really focus in on whether or not people have CSI. So that is the issue at the moment. Now, the guidance, does that make sense so far, Andrew?
It does, and I've got lots of questions have triggered. If I can ask now, Louis. So, what types of health insurance? I mean, I know at Truth Legal we've got a insurance policy for our colleagues, but don't I don't know whether would that count for CSI for our colleagues
Yeah, I
if they
mean,
needed?
it has to be comprehensive cover. So, I mean, it has to be covering your kind of core medical needs. It's not, I think quite often people or employee packages have counseling and these kind of
Yeah.
like slightly side medical benefits, massages and stuff like that. It's probably not going to cut the mustard. It has to be covering core medical services. There are, I mean, on that point, have you ever heard of an EHIC card? If you've
No.
been, so if you've been traveling around Europe, you can be covered in other European countries if you hold an EHIC card, which is a free card. So if individuals held that card, that can count, but few people did. In very rare cases, there might be a reciprocal arrangement between the UK and an individual country to cover each other's health care, but I believe they're few and far between.
And how would you evidence that you had a certain policy however many years ago? Because I couldn't tell you who insured our car 3 years ago. So would anybody therefore have their health insurance from 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a case of checking your files, checking the paperwork, probably getting in touch with the company if you don't have the policy to ask them to confirm that you were covered for the relevant period.
Okay, and say at Bupa, which is a well-known company, do they have a sort of package which says, "Oh, this is a definite CSI package"?
Probably not. They're just going to kind of confirm the nature of what the cover was. I think if you can get some kind of policy document which sounds just about right, they'll probably accept it. Okay, so I don't think they're going to forensically go through exactly what services are required as long as it's kind of covering general medical needs. So yeah, that
even if you never used it because you were using NHS.
Yeah, so the problem is because there was simply no need to have it, and because people weren't told about this, so it wasn't like there was a big sign saying when you enter the UK you better get CSI or you're not actually here legally. So people just didn't bother getting it because they could use the NHS. So it was only in more recent years when there's a bit of media attention around it, so people have kind of belatedly got it, but that doesn't help them for the full 10-year period when they were unaware of the requirement. What the guidance goes on to state, this is maybe one of the key issues, is that there is discretion to overlook this requirement. Okay. So there is a slight lifeline there, but then it doesn't tell you what factors would be count in your favor. Okay, so how do you get the Home Office so exercising discretion means basically ignoring the fact you didn't have private health insurance, but it doesn't tell you how you can make your case out. It does say that if you've previously been refused an application because you didn't have CSI and you still didn't get CSI, that appears to definitely be a problem. Kind of fair enough. You were made aware of the requirement but didn't get it. But that doesn't apply for most people. Most people, it's just a case of I never knew about it. So what I could maybe talk about what I'm advising people to do.
Yeah, how do you overcome that massive hurdle?
I mean,
most people would be faced with.
Yeah, so because they don't tell you how you're meant to approach this issue, what counts in your favor, I see it as a bit of a risk. So my first advice is generally, if you could wait a couple of years until that 10-year period, the problematic period when you didn't have CSI falls outside of the 10-year window, I would tend to suggest just waiting, okay, because you will have settled status, which is indefinite leave to remain, which is very secure. So unless you're going to kind of go out and commit a fairly serious criminal offence, there might not be any immediate need to become British. But for other people who, for various reasons, have to become British, they will have to try and argue for discretion. I should maybe just rewind a second. Before you're arguing discretion, it's worth just double checking that you definitely have to go down that road. So if you had a family member here who's also from the EU, an EU national, you may well have a lawful basis to live here through them. So rather than your own right, for example, if you've got a partner, a spouse, or another relative who is here lawfully under the EEA regulations, the relevant law, then the fact you didn't have CSI might not be a problem because you have a right to reside through your family member. So that's one of the things that I would encourage people to double check before they go down the discretion route, if that makes sense.
And this all comes to a head because of Brexit.
So I think a lot of people have been spurred to apply to naturalise because of Brexit. You know, a lot of people were saying this was just not something they were ever going to consider, but now they feel that the rules have changed. Could the rules change again? And you know, people who don't have British nationality, could they be in some kind of vulnerable position? I caution people against that kind of, you know, I don't want people to think that. I think that's very unlikely. I think people should feel secure with settled status, but I guess it's an emotional issue as well, isn't it? To become
absolutely. And what are the benefits of becoming British, other than, I suppose, a British passport, whatever that's worth? And what's the these are the reasons why you should become naturalised. The word seems a little odd, but what are the pros and cons for doing that or not?
Well, I mean, good question. There aren't loads. I guess you have the right to vote, and you have the ultimate security in your immigration status. So you can lose settled status if you go abroad for 5 years in one go. Yeah. So, but I mean, who's going to necessarily have to go abroad for 5 years in one shot? You'd think it'd be possible to return at least for one day within that 5-year period. But yeah, it tends to be people are like the idea of becoming British. They're proud. I would say that different countries have different rules regarding dual nationality. So I've had a lot of inquiries from German nationals. Germany only allows single nationality. So the general position with Germany is that if you want to become British, you have to give up your German citizenship.
Wow.
So the dilemma there is that if you become British, then you could lose your free movement rights because you lose your German nationality. But there is a special rule which says if you apply before the end of 2020, you can keep both German and British nationality. So there can be something to lose by becoming British, depending on what your country of origin's rules on dual nationality are.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Louis, this is incredibly complicated at a time of great dislocation with pandemics and Brexit and so on. So typically, a lot of questions from German people, but any other groups of people, particularly that you've noticed are in a particular special place?
Well, yeah, Germans are the biggest single nationality that have been coming to me. There's, all over really. We seem to get quite a lot of Romanians. I'm not totally sure why that is. Maybe they joined the EU later on, so they feel maybe a bit more vulnerable and kind of eager to secure their status. But apart from that, it's a broad mix of different nationalities, really.
Gotcha. And how are you helping people with this? Is it just a phone call? Are you filling the forms, or what are the costs as well?
So I'd say if you're kind of interested, or if you're affected by this topic, do check out my very detailed blog. I think it's 3,000 words, which covers this in a lot more detail than I'm sure you would want to go into now. Have a look at that, and then you're also welcome to contact me. So I offer a free kind of initial consultation where I can just talk through some of the key issues, and then if you then think, oh, I might want you to help with some aspect, then I can give you, quotes on what that costs. So in terms of the service I provide, it ranges from a sort of detailed consultation, written advice, up to doing everything for you. So preparing an application, doing the cover letter, checking your documents, helping you with the submission of the documents, and everything else until you get that positive decision.
Thank you, Louis. My experience as a lawyer, and obviously not an immigration lawyer, is that the Home Office can be quite brutal of all the departments. And missing deadlines or missing a piece of paper here and there can be, frightfully, horrible to you. I mean, am I right with that sort of analysis, the Home Office, or is it a bit more gentle than as I thought it is?
Yeah, they are pretty strict on certain documents being in place, and they don't tend to come back to you and say, you're missing X, Y, or Z. They tend to just refuse it. That's the problem. So you really want to get everything right at the beginning. I mean, I'll be honest and say the naturalization is the kind of application which some people can do themselves, many people can do themselves if they've got a straightforward case. It's not necessarily a lawyer case. It tends to be when there's more kind of complex issues like the ones we're discussing, that there tends to be more of a kind of need to get a lawyer, or unless you just want to, put some of the trouble on, want a lawyer just to take care of it, just to save you time, then that might be when you want a lawyer either way. But generally speaking, it's the more complex ones that you might want lawyer input.
Splendid. Thank you. What else do people need to know about CSI and naturalisation? Have you covered it? I
think that's
understand it now,
yeah.
and I didn't before.
Yes. So you've learned about some very, very obscure area of immigration law, but it's one that's affecting a huge amounts of people. We're getting so many inquiries, which is why we thought to put together this video just as a bit of a explainer. But yeah, check out the blog. That should tell you more. Then do get in touch if you wish.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Louis. See you
All
soon.
right. Thanks,
Bye.
Andrew. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.